Hey, how's it going, everyone? Did y'all miss me? I am back. This is investing guidance I would tell a family friend. And no, I'm not going to try to sell you a stupid newsletter or pitch a sketchy ass crypto platform. This is just solid advice straight from the ball sack, a clean shaven scrotum for your mental visuals. This video is dedicated for those of you that know investing is important but do not want to be too involved. Simple steps and wisdom will be coming your way. And if you don't know, well, now you know. Investing is a way to have your money work for you so that you don't have to work for money your entire life. And by the way, it's not clickbait, but if you haven't already, you should watch my video about a secretary in New York that ended up a millionaire from investing into the stock market. And not just her, but a parking lot attendant and a janitor did it as well. That's how life-changing investing can be. Stay with me. There's many different investing strategies, right? There's the ever so hyped cryptocurrency, there's flipping real estate, there's collecting Jordan sneakers and Beanie Babies and whatnot. But the tried and true, reliable way is to invest in your receding hairline by booking a flight to Korea to get a hair transplant for about $5,000. I'm just teasing. If you're balding, just embrace it. Buzz it all off like Dana White of the UFC. And maybe take a little performance-enhancing drugs and trend. But really, jokes aside, dividend investing is the way, the truth, and the correct answer. There's many different strategies, but dividend investing is the way to go. It's the perfect combination of the risk-reward ratio, and understanding good growth is the pillar of a slow and steady strategy. But when it comes to dividend investing, there's a natural life cycle for most dividend-paying companies. I think it's important to understand this on a high level so that the investing guidance that's about to come your way is digestible as well. Speaking of digest, I'm finally at an age, by the way, I'm in my mid-30s, but anyhow, I cannot eat spicy food for dinner late at night anymore, unless I want to have terrible sleep where I'm tossing and turning all night long. Whenever I eat spicy food, and I'm talking about that spicy ethnic food that makes your forehead all sweaty, late in the evening, well then my stomach straps in for a rough time. I guess it's one of those things where I can only enjoy it during breakfast or lunch, but whatever. But anyhow, when we take into consideration most solid companies in the stock market, they go through this life cycle that you see on your screen right now. They start out being a company that has a lot of promise and prospects in their future, meaning there's a lot of high growth in all of their numbers and finances and metrics across the board. The best example that I can give is Google. And when they're in this high growth phase of their life, they usually do not pay a dividend, and if they do, it's going to be really small, meaning like a 0.5% dividend yield. Naturally, as this company becomes more and more mature and developed, their growth starts to slow down. And that's when we start to see a dividend yield of about 2 to 2.5%. The best example that I can give is McDonald's. McDonald's is a company that in the past, 15 to 20 years, it was growing and compounding at a very fast rate. However, almost every single country has their fair share of McDonald's. And so their ability to expand and grow at double-digit rates is kind of difficult. And that's why they're launching that cafe segment of their business. I think it's called Cosmic, because they're trying to diversify their portfolio and increase the numbers. Once a company reaches a state where their market share is absolutely diluted and they can't grow anymore, then they become known as a mature company. And when a dividend-paying company becomes mature, then we typically see a dividend yield of about 3 to 5%. Which takes me to my next point. From age 18 to 50, a high dividend yield should not be that important. What I'm trying to say is that in your prime working adult years, the name of the game should be to grow your money. Like the example with Google. If you are young and not retired, then the total return and the growth of your money is more important than a high dividend yield. Yes, I just repeated myself because it's that important. And to do that, to grow your money, it'll have different names depending on your brokerage account, but it only requires investments into 2 index funds. Yes, it's that simple. An S&P 500 index fund called VU and a total US stock market index fund called VTI. That's it. Those two, quite literally the definition of set and forget. If you throw your money at VU every month or every 2 weeks or at VTI, you will inevitably thank yourself when you turn 50 years old. And I'll tell you what, a part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this stuff, the stock market and personal finance, is because I wish someone would have told me about investing when I was growing up in school. I didn't figure this stuff out until later in my life. Had I have known, I would have put every single dollar I had to my name into the stock market when I was a young soldier in the army. Instead, like other people, I just bought the most useless crap on Amazon that ended up in the landfill. So funny enough, if I ever have the opportunity to become like a high school teacher, business economics and teaching a class centered around life advice like this, personal finance, would be an awesome gig for me. Now, at age 51 until you retire, the strategy should shift a bit. It's not going to be drastic, but it should. It's no longer about growing your money, but rather about preserving your capital. You don't want to lose all that money that you work so hard to earn and invest with, right? So this is when I would introduce SCHD, an index fund that is focused on dividends, into the portfolio. Now, to backtrack, VTI and VU, they both pay a dividend, but the yield is not the greatest. We're talking about like a 1.2, 1.3%. On the other hand, with SCHD, depending on the day, it has a dividend yield of about 3.5%. So drastically higher because SCHD is not focused on growing your money, but rather about the income. But not only that, I would also handpick a few or a dozen individual stocks that I like to refer to as dividend compounders with cheese. Shout out to the channel. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the speculative kind, but mature dividend compounders. The key word here being mature. Companies that are here today and here tomorrow, just thriving, just doing their thing. Like what you see on your screen right now. Because as you approach retirement, you will most likely want a stable income from dividends, right? That way, you don't have to be a silly goose and sell 4% of your portfolio every year. That way, when you're retired, you'll have a hands-free passive income pouring in from dividends without you having to do anything. It just makes more sense to me than having to sell 4% of your portfolio every year, which is the commonly accepted way of investing and retiring. And to clear it up, you could sell some VTI or VU to introduce some SCHD and dividend compounders into the portfolio. Or you could allocate any new capital from age 51 to like 55 into the portfolio, into the latter specifically, meaning any new money coming into the portfolio would buy additional shares of SCHD or into your chosen individual stocks that you believe to be mature dividend compounders. Either path sounds fine to me. And speaking of retirement and growing older, from my understanding, staying in physical shape is one of the best gifts you can give to yourself. Yes, I'm about to preach to the choir. Well, for the past week or so, I was about as sick as a corrupt politician, meaning I was not able to work out. And as someone that likes to work out every day, it bugged me. So I wasn't able to do a single push-up, let alone shower naked. When I'm sick, even washing myself becomes a huge burden because I'd rather soak in my butt sweat and just stay in bed, cozy, and just sleeping and trying to recover as fast as possible, not waste time showering. Before making this video, I went running today for the first time in a long time. I'm talking about in 9 days. And what's funny is that I felt like an overweight criminal running away from the cops. It was tough. I was huffing and puffing, but it felt nice to get the heart racing again. Like the first time I fell in love with reading books as a kid. And as an adult, you're lucky to see me read 1 book in a fiscal year. Yes, that's pretty embarrassing to admit, but I just don't read books anymore. Now that I'm all healthy again, I'm challenging myself, and by the way, I'm challenging you as well. We should both read books. Let's go ahead and make reading books great again. Thank you, and please don't forget to vote for me.
All right, wise guy,
What order should I do this investing thing? Well, first, you should max out your employer-sponsored funds like the 401k or TSP. The tax-advantaged accounts are seriously underrated. Then, afterwards, I would put some cash into my Roth IRA or traditional IRA account. If you're well off and have more than enough cash left over, and if you're rich, then please give me a $100 gift card to Apple for Christmas. No, I'm just kidding. But if you have idle cash left over after doing the first two steps, then I would throw it into a normal taxable brokerage account. And for all three modalities, the strategy that we just talked about, depending on your age, would work just fine. Now, the caveat that I want to say is that unless your employer's 401k is terrible with high fees and no matching contributions, this is the order that I would recommend. So let's talk about the finance flow chart. Take a look at this guy running at the top right of your screen. Please take note how spending $50 as spending allowance for your wife's boyfriend isn't on the list above. Have some dignity. If your wife has a boyfriend, bro, you got to do something about that. That ain't cool. But I heard that he likes apple juice, so please don't forget to stop by Aldi on your way home from work to pick up his favorite carton of apple juice. Thanks. The finance flow chart, incorporating personal finance and the stock market. First and foremost, you should establish an emergency fund of cash that can sustain your spending for 3 to 6 months in case of a layoff or a urgent medical situation. Stuff happens. I'm not judging. I would stash that cash not under the pillow, but into a high yield savings account, with your bank, or into a money market fund with your brokerage account. After that, I would simultaneously laser focus on paying down high interest debts and investing into the stock market. Depending on how much damage you're in, it can be a ratio of 90-10 or 50-50 or even like 60-40, meaning 90% of your cash towards paying down the debt and 10% towards investing into the stock market. And if you're struggling or living paycheck to paycheck, I would prioritize paying off the high interest debts first. If you are swimming in credit card debt, then you should aim to pay that off as if Dave Ramsey is in the shower with you, late at night, breathing down your neck and silently judging you with his 1990s goatee. After you clean up your mess with Capital One, I would tackle low-interest debts, such as if you were lucky enough to snag a mortgage during the pandemic for like 2.6%. And when I say that, I mean principal-only mortgage payments. That way you can pay off the mortgage faster. Even just throwing down an extra $100 a month towards your mortgage principal literally shaves off a year or two or even 5 years. But with that said, focus on putting more money into the stock market because you'll get better returns than by trying to pay off the mortgage early. Unless your mortgage has an interest rate of like 12 or 14%, which is ridiculous. But if your mortgage payment has an interest rate of like 4 or 5%, and that's the only loan you have, I would inverse the logic from before and go with 90% of my leftover cash into the stock market and 10% towards principal-only mortgage payments. Note how I didn't say paying towards the interest, but towards the principal amount. Loans, invest, and total return. I looked into it, whether it's better to get rid of all of your loans first before investing or to invest first or a combination of both. And what I have found is that a good rule of thumb from Vanguard's research, this is their paper titled What to Do with Your Next Dollar, is that if the APR for any loan exceeds 6.4%, then prioritize paying it off first. Otherwise, you're better off investing into the S&P 500, aka VOO, for a better return of your cash. I'll leave a link to this research paper in the video description if you want to take a look at it. But basically, the 401k, what you see on the left side of your screen, averages 9.1% annualized rate of return and gives you the most pound for pound return of your cash. So if your employer gives you like a 5% matching contribution for your 401k, then please do it. I don't even know you, man, but do it. That's easy, free money. But that doesn't mean to put all of your money into your 401k. If your employer only matches up to 3%, then only do 3%. Hopefully all of this makes sense and you're nodding your head the whole way through because it's common sense. Because I'll tell you what isn't common sense. Grown adults throwing temper fits and being emotionally stupid. That's why I should have added a slide to this presentation about learning how to develop emotional intelligence, because not only would it help in the off chance that you catch your spouse in in bed with the DoorDash driver, but also more importantly to stomach any stock market crash so that you don't panic when you look at your investment portfolio and you see that your money is down by 10, 20, 30%. When it comes to investing, the golden rule is that it's not the brain that's the most important organ. Rather, it's the stomach. If you can stomach the volatility of the stock market, you'll be just fine. Because this is a video about giving advice to friends and family, on that note, I wanted to call out that there's people that want a family more than dividends, even more than a nice Costco pizza for dinner. And unfortunately, these people that want to add a baby to their family, they go to desperate lengths to make it happen. So very recently, when I was sick in bed, I had a lot of time in my hands, and I went down this rabbit hole of finding out that there's actual freaks out there that run their own fertility clinics. I'm talking about guys who will literally ejaculate into a cup and sell it to a lesbian couple who will then take a syringe and paste it up their canal as if they're a turkey on Thanksgiving. And there's even a dude out in California that does DIY sperm donations. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck, man? I mean, I got pretty desperate when I was a young model and actor. I'll be honest, I contemplated the idea of becoming a sperm donor at a registered sperm bank. Because apparently, if you're good looking, tall, and smart, then you get paid more. But the thought of having 10 different kids all around the world, that was enough to spook me away. I guess the notion of having kids but not really being their father, it was a psychological barrier that I just couldn't get over. So my whole thing is, there's entire villages of orphans, kids in foster care systems, and adoption agencies all around the world. So why not just adopt? For crying out loud, I mean, there's crazy people that are constantly guilting others about adopting that aggressive pit bull from a dog shelter rather than buying an intelligent poodle from a breeder. Like, I'm sorry, Sharon with hairy armpits. I don't want to get an aggressive pit bull and introduce that to my house because they could snap at any moment. And some of us are allergic to dogs, so a hypoallergenic breed is important, and you can't really get a poodle from the dog shelter. But as I am standing on my soapbox that I bought on Amazon for Black Friday for 50% off, what I want to say is, using that same logic, why can't we say the same thing right back to these folks? Why can't they give a kid a fair chance at life before they age out of the system, where they'll statistically end up in the streets? It's a really sad thing. So instead of trying to get impregnated by these random guys on the internet, why not adopt? Then again, who am I to judge? There's women out here making six figures every month by filming videos of their feet. I don't have the right to judge people for their lifestyle choices. And even myself, I'm an idiot that makes YouTube videos for a living. So I guess it's one of those things where it's like, let any one of you that is without sin be the first to throw a stone. And on that basis, I'm not going to judge. I just think it's fascinating, but also a little disturbing that there's DIY sperm donors in this world. On the flip side, can you imagine if 20 or even 50 of those lesbian couples come to the dude for child support payments? All I'm trying to say is that would be a wild situation. So if you made it through that rant and this point in the video, you might be asking yourself, well, why not you? How come you don't follow your own advice? Why don't you just invest into VU and VTI and call it a day? Because, James, I'll tell you what. Quite frankly, I'm delusional and a bit crazy. I feel like I can get better odds than the 10% that VU has yielded for the past 100 years. And more importantly, I find this investing stuff to be fun. The research, the calculated risks, looking into the earnings, doing a deep dive on the finances and whatnot. It's a hobby of mine to pick individual stocks that I believe to be winners of the stock market, and then to cry myself to sleep when my investments go in the red by 30, 40, 50%. But anyways, it feels good to be back and to be healthy again. And if you know anything about history, back in the day, a single fever or diarrhea or headache, yeah, it could take you out. You would have been Dunskies. So shout out to Dayquil and Procter & Gamble for helping me get through the past week. When you're healthy, you want so many different things. You're never satisfied with life. But when you're sick, there's nothing more that you want than to be healthy again. Your health is the greatest wealth. And the worst part about being sick is that my creative juices and my ability to make jokes, it was non-existent. And for some strange reason, I was craving McDonald's almost every single day that I was sick. I felt like a pregnant woman with an irrational desire for their French fries. But the point is, we're good now, and I hope everything is good with you as well. And by the way, we're getting closer to 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty amazing. And as a reminder, once we hit 5,000 subscribers as a community, I'm going to be working on that life story video. So until next time, make sure you wipe until there's no more brown, and stay safe. Dividend compounders with cheese, signing out. Love you.